Once upon a time, not too long ago, and not too far away, there was a sleepy little coastal town called Seabreeze Cove. It wasn't on most maps, mostly because the people who lived there liked it that way. The houses were painted in soft blues and seafoam greens. The streets were lined with seashells instead of streetlights. And every evening, the whole town smelled faintly of salt, seaweed, and warm cinnamon rolls from Mrs. Nettle's bakery. Now, Seabreeze Cove had one very strange secret. One that no one ever talked about out loud, but everyone knew in their hearts. The mermaids were real. And not just real. They were, well, kind of nosy. You see, every summer, right around the time the fireflies started blinking and the ocean turned the color of melted turquoise, the mermaids would come ashore. Not to conquer or cause chaos. Oh no. They came to borrow things. It started small. A shiny hairpin left on the windowsill? Gone by morning. A child's favorite seashell necklace. Found later tangled in kelp down by the tide pools. A pair of reading glasses? Spotted perched on a crab's claw, as if the crab were pretending to be a very serious librarian. At first, folks in Seabreeze Cove were baffled. "Who's been sneaking into my garden shed?" Old Mr. Grumble would mutter, though his shed was always locked tighter than a clam. "Who took my spare flip-flop?" asked young Lila, though she only ever wore one anyway. It matched her mood that day. But then one moonlit night, little Milo Puddlewick saw them. Milo was 8 years old, with hair the color of wet sand and a habit of staying up way past his bedtime. That night, he'd snuck out to the beach to watch the bioluminescent plankton dance under the stars. A secret ritual he'd been doing every summer since he could walk. And that's when he saw them. Not one or two, but dozens. Dozens of shimmering figures rising from the waves, their tails flicking softly in the moonlight. Scales glinting like crushed pearls in sea glass. Their hair floated around them like ink in water. And their eyes, oh, their eyes, were the exact color of the deep ocean just before dawn. Milo held his breath. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. One of the mermaids, a young one with a crown of coral and a curious tilt to her head, spotted him. Instead of vanishing or hissing like a startled cat, she smiled. Then she held up something small and glinting. It was Milo's lost toy boat, the one he'd sailed into the waves last week and never seen again. She placed it gently on the sand, gave him a little wave, and slipped back into the sea. From that night on, Milo became the town's unofficial mermaid liaison. Not that anyone officially called it that, but if something went missing, folks would whisper, "Maybe the mermaids needed it," and leave it at that. Because here's the thing about the Mermaid Invasions. They never took anything cruel or harmful. They never stole food or money or anything that would hurt someone. They only borrowed things that sparkled, hummed, or held a story. A music box that played a lullaby. Gone for a week, then returned with a tiny pearl tucked inside the gears. A wind chime made of old spoons. Missing for 3 days. Then found hanging from a driftwood branch, now strung with tiny shells that chimed like distant whale songs. Even Mayor Higgins's prized pocket watch, vanished during the annual Sea Breeze Festival, was returned the next morning. Its face now etched with delicate patterns of waves and starfish. The townsfolk began to leave little offerings on the shore at dusk. Buttons, smooth stones, bits of ribbon, even old keys that no longer opened anything. And in return, the mermaids would leave gifts of their own. Strands of glowing seaweed that stayed lit for hours, conch shells that whispered secrets when held to the ear, and once a whole basket of perfectly round sea glass in every colour imaginable. But the real magic wasn't in the objects, it was in the feeling. On nights when the mermaids visited, the whole town slept deeper, dreamed sweeter, and woke with salt on their lips and a quiet joy in their hearts. Even grumpy Mr. Grumble would be caught humming by noon, though he'd deny it if you asked. One summer, though, something changed. The mermaids stopped coming. No borrowed hairpins, no returned treasures, no shimmering tales in the moonlight. At first, everyone thought it was just a quiet year. Maybe the mermaids were busy. Maybe the currents had shifted. But as weeks turned into months, the town began to feel dull. The colours seemed less bright. The ocean sounded farther away. Even Mrs. Nettle's cinnamon rolls tasted a little less sweet. Milo, now 12 and still a night owl, couldn't stand it. One evening, he walked down to the shore with a jar full of fireflies and a small wooden flute his grandfather had carved. He sat on his favourite rock, the one shaped like a sleeping turtle, and played the softest, saddest tune he knew. He played until his fingers ached and the stars blinked awake. And then, a ripple, then another, then a dozen. From the waves emerged not just mermaids, but merfolk of all kinds. Some with tails like dolphins, others like eels, a few with fins that shimmered like butterfly wings. And at the front, the same coral-crowned mermaid from years ago, only now she looked tired, worried. She swam close to the shore, her eyes wide and pleading. Milo stopped playing. "What's wrong?" he whispered. She pointed to the ocean, then she made a sweeping motion with her hands, like something big was missing. Over the next few nights, the merfolk began leaving signs. A drawing etched in wet sand, a net, a tangle of plastic, a fish trapped in a soda ring. The truth sank in like a stone. The mermaids hadn't stopped visiting because they didn't care. They'd stopped because their home, the deep, glittering world beneath the waves, was sick. Trash from faraway places had drifted into their coral gardens. Fishing lines snared their friends. The water itself felt heavy, and they didn't know how to fix it alone. So Milo did what any good friend would do. He told the town. At first, folks were skeptical. Mermaids asking for help? "That's a tall tale," said old Captain Briggs, though he'd once sworn he saw a mermaid patching his boat with kelp. But then Lila found a message in a bottle. A real one, sealed with wax and tied with seaweed. Inside was a drawing of a sea turtle tangled in rope, and the words, "Please help us remember how to shine." That did it. The next morning, Seabreeze Cove woke up with purpose. They organized beach cleanups. They built recycling bins shaped like seashells. Kids made posters that read, "Plastic hurts mermaids," and taped them to lampposts. Mrs. Nettle started baking Save Our Seas cupcakes with edible glitter that sparkled like plankton. And every evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the whole town gathered on the shore. Not to leave trinkets, but to sing soft songs, old sea shanties, made up lullabies about clean waves and happy fish. And slowly, the ocean began to heal. One night, just as summer turned to autumn, Milo saw them again, the mermaids. But this time, they weren't borrowing. They were thanking. Dozens of them rose from the waves, holding hands, or fins, and began to sing back. Their voices were like wind through reeds and bubbles, rising to the surface, haunting and beautiful and full of hope. As they sang, the water around them glowed, not just with plankton, but with something deeper, older, kinder, And when they vanished beneath the waves, they left behind a single gift, a conch shell, warm to the touch, that played the sound of their song whenever someone held it to their ear. From that day on, the invasions changed. They weren't about taking any more. They were about sharing. Sometimes, on quiet nights, you can still hear the mermaids singing from the deep. And if you leave a clean beach and a kind heart behind, they might just leave you a dream of coral castles, dancing dolphins, and oceans so clear you can see forever. And if you're very lucky, you might wake up with a single pearl on your windowsill, cool and smooth and perfect, as if to say, "Thank you. We're still here. And so are you." So close your eyes now, little one. Breathe in the salt air. Listen for the waves. And know that somewhere, beneath the moonlit sea, the mermaids are watching over you. Not as invaders, but as friends. Loved this bedtime tale? Tuck it into your heart like a seashell under your pillow. If it brought you a little calm tonight, why not share it with someone who needs sweet dreams too? And if you ever wake up wondering, were the mermaids real? Just listen to the waves. They always answer in whispers. Sweet dreams, little tide chaser. May your sleep be deep, your dreams be sparkly, and your shores always clean for mermaid friends.